A shrimp smaller than your finger can live inside a fortress, serve a queen, defend its colony, and fire one of the fastest biological weapons in the ocean. Stranger still, some members of its family behave less like ordinary shrimp and more like ants or termites. They share a home, overlap across generations, and divide reproduction between a few breeders and many defenders. Their entire society can exist inside the twisting canals of a living sponge. And that raises a remarkable question. How did a tiny snapping shrimp evolve from an ordinary crustacean into one of the ocean's rarest social experiments? Meet Synalpheus, a genus of snapping shrimp found mainly in tropical and subtropical seas. Many species spend most of their adult lives inside marine sponges. From the outside, that sponge may look quiet and harmless. Inside, however, its tunnels can contain an organized shrimp community, numbering from dozens to hundreds of individuals. Not every Synalpheus species lives this way. Some form pairs. Others live communally, without extreme reproductive specialization. But several species have evolved something scientists call eusociality. That word matters. Eusocial animals usually show three important traits. Multiple generations live together. Individuals cooperate in caring for the colony. And reproduction becomes highly unequal. That combination is famous in ants, bees, and termites. Finding it in shrimp was unexpected. In species such as Synalpheus regalis, one dominant breeding female can produce most of the colony's offspring. Around her live many other shrimp that reproduce little or not at all. Instead, they contribute to defending the shared sponge. So imagine a beehive. Now flood it, replace the wax with a living sponge, and give the workers oversized snapping claws. That gets surprisingly close. The sponge is more than an apartment building. It is shelter, feeding habitat, nursery, and fortress combined. Synalpheus shrimp move through narrow internal canals, protected from many larger predators outside. But good real estate creates competition. Suitable sponges are valuable resources. Other shrimp may attempt to enter. Predators can attack the sponge itself. Rival colonies may compete for space. This environmental pressure may help explain why cooperation became so powerful. Scientists describe this lifestyle as fortress defense. Instead of leaving home repeatedly to gather distant resources, the animals live inside or directly beside the resource they depend on. Their house is also their pantry. Protect the fortress, and you protect almost everything needed for survival. That changes the evolutionary mathematics. A lone shrimp defending a valuable sponge has limited options. A colony filled with relatives can produce something much harder to dislodge. And their main defensive tool is spectacular. Snapping shrimp possess one greatly enlarged claw. It does not simply pinch like ordinary pincers. The claw closes at extreme speed, forcing a jet of water outward. That jet creates a rapidly forming cavitation bubble. When the bubble collapses, it generates an intense pressure pulse and a sharp snapping sound. For a tiny crustacean, it is an absurd amount of physics packed into one limb. The snap can help deter or damage small opponents at close range. Inside a sponge's narrow passages, that weapon becomes especially useful. There is little room to dodge. Colonies can respond aggressively when intruders enter their host. Workers approach threats and use their snapping claws as defensive weapons. This creates another fascinating feature of Synalpheus society. The breeding female does not need to personally handle every confrontation. Other colony members absorb much of that defensive burden. In highly social species, reproduction and defense become increasingly separated. The queen invests heavily in producing offspring. Other individuals contribute more strongly to colony protection. It is not a miniature human monarchy. Nobody is holding elections inside the sponge. But biologically, the division of labor is real, and the colony begins long before the adults start defending anything. Development provides one of the biggest clues to how this social system evolved. Many non-eusocial Synalpheus species produce larvae that enter the plankton. These young shrimp pass through free-swimming larval stages before eventually settling into suitable habitat. That gives them a chance to disperse. Eusocial species tend to follow a different strategy. Their development is much more direct. Instead of spending a long period drifting through open water, young can emerge in a relatively advanced form and remain close to their birthplace. That seemingly small change has enormous consequences. If offspring disperse widely, families separate. If offspring stay home, relatives accumulate. Now mothers, siblings, and later generations can occupy the same sponge simultaneously. A family becomes a group. A group can defend territory. And once group living improves survival, natural selection has something powerful to work with. Over many generations, cooperation can become increasingly specialized. This does not mean scientists have one perfectly settled story explaining every step. Social evolution is complicated, and different Synalpheus lineages show different social structures. That diversity is precisely why researchers find them so valuable. Within one genus, scientists can compare shrimp living as pairs, communal groups, and eusocial colonies. It is almost like discovering several chapters of the same evolutionary experiment, still operating today. Researchers can ask what changes first. Does limited habitat encourage families to remain together? Does direct development reduce dispersal? Does relatedness make cooperative defense more advantageous? Does larger colony size favor stronger reproductive specialization? Synalpheus gives scientists a living system for testing those ideas. And there is another important character in this story: the sponge itself. For the shrimp, the benefits are obvious. A sponge offers narrow, protected tunnels and reliable habitat. The sponge may benefit too. Research suggests that associations between some sponge-dwelling Synalpheus and their hosts can be mutualistic. Shrimp defend their occupied sponge aggressively, potentially discouraging predators and intruders. So the sponge provides a fortress. The shrimp become part of its security system. Nature apparently discovered outsourced home defense before humans invented subscription services. But what does any of this do for us? Synalpheus will probably not revolutionize civilization by directly producing food or medicine tomorrow. Its value to humans is more subtle and scientifically more interesting. First, these shrimp help researchers understand the evolution of cooperation. Eusociality is one of biology's great puzzles. Why would an animal sometimes reduce its own reproduction while helping relatives reproduce instead? Ants and bees provide famous examples, but they share many evolutionary features that can make comparisons difficult. Synalpheus offers something radically different. It is a marine crustacean. Its social organization evolved in a completely separate branch of animal life. Yet evolution arrived at several familiar solutions: family groups, reproductive division of labor, cooperative defense, and colony-level organization. That gives researchers an independent test case. If similar social structures repeatedly emerge under similar ecological pressures, scientists can identify deeper principles governing cooperation. Second, snapping shrimp help us study underwater soundscapes. The combined snapping of countless shrimp can create major components of coastal ocean noise. Hydrophones often record reefs filled with a constant crackling background, generated partly by snapping shrimp. Those sounds can contain ecological information. Researchers studying reefs can use underwater acoustics to investigate habitats, biological activity, and changes across marine environments. Synalpheus is only part of that larger acoustic community, but snapping shrimp collectively demonstrate something important. A healthy-looking ocean cannot be judged by sight alone. Sometimes you need to listen. Third, their relationships with sponges offer insight into symbiosis and ecosystem complexity. A sponge may look like one organism. Ecologically, it can function more like an occupied building filled with interacting species. Shrimp receive shelter. Sponges may receive defenders. Predators encounter resistance. Competitors encounter an established colony. One small partnership can influence many relationships around it. Understanding those networks matters, because coral reefs and sponge communities support enormous biological diversity. When scientists study how these systems function, they gain better tools for understanding what happens when habitats are damaged or environmental conditions change. But perhaps the most useful lesson from Synalpheus is conceptual. Complex society does not require a large brain. It does not require language. It does not even require land. Under the right evolutionary pressures, surprisingly sophisticated group organization can emerge from simple individual behaviors. Stay near relatives. Defend valuable habitat. Specialize when specialization improves the group's success. Repeat those pressures across generations, and evolution can build something that resembles a society. That is the payoff hidden inside the sponge. Synalpheus did not become successful by becoming individually impressive in every possible way. Its greatest advantage came from combining unusual biology with cooperation. The snapping claw provides force. The sponge provides protection. Direct development keeps families together. Cooperative defense protects the shared resource. And reproductive specialization helps some colonies function as integrated social units. No single piece explains the whole system. Together, they create one of the strangest social structures known from the ocean. So the next time someone describes ants or bees as nature's ultimate social animals, there is a small correction worth remembering. Far beneath the surface, inside the dark corridors of tropical sponges, tiny armed crustaceans reached a similar evolutionary destination by an entirely different route. They built no cities. They wrote no rules. They simply stayed together, defended what mattered, and let natural selection do the organizing. And somehow, the ocean ended up with shrimp that behave like a colony,